explain those two concepts first. For those of you who may not be familiar with those concepts very well, a diocese is a geographical area in which all of the churches of a particular body of worshipers are considered one body under one bishop. Now, in the New Testament, we have many illustrations of this. For example, the church in Ephesus. Paul never says the church is in Ephesus when he writes to them. He writes to the church in Ephesus. And the church in Ephesus, or the church in Sardis, or the church in Thessalonica, these were churches in a geographical area around a large city. Ephesus and Thessalonica, Corinth, all of those were large cities. And they had many congregations. They didn't have buildings like we have today because they weren't allowed to build them. It was still the time of the Roman Empire. And so they just simply met in homes. But they would all meet under one bishop. There was one bishop appointed for each city. And that bishop was the head of that church. And the connection of the church in Ephesus, the direct connection of the church in Ephesus with Christ, who is the head of the church. Our churches today, all of those that have an episcopal structure, like the Roman Church, all of the Eastern Orthodox churches, Anglican churches, we all have the same structure. It's called an episcopal structure because the word episcopal just simply means bishop. And so the link that all of us have directly and symbolically with Christ is through our bishop. So all of us met in Orlando this last week for our diocesan synod. Now there will be a provincial synod in the fall, and that provincial synod will be in mid-America, near St. Louis, and the provincial synod, a province is a grouping of dioceses under one presiding bishop. And our presiding bishop is Bishop Walter Grundor, who is also the bishop of our diocese. And so we have a number of dioceses in our church that will all send representatives to St. Louis for the meeting there. The theme of our synod this year, and the theme that the bishop has asked us to subscribe to, is essentially fulfilling the mission of Christ at home and abroad. Fulfilling the mission of Christ at home and abroad. And there is a wonderful link between that theme and what St. Peter was called to do in the reading this morning from the Acts of the Apostles. Because this particular case where Peter was sent to the home of the centurion, the Roman centurion, and his household, his slaves, his children, his wife, all of the members of the household were all Gentiles. And this is the first case that we know of in the New Testament where God specifically directed one of the leaders of the early church to go and tell the story of Christ to the Gentiles. Up until the 11th chapter of Acts, everything that transpired between, as it were, God and the Jews. And this is the case, the first case that we know of, where God says, okay, I want you now to go to the Gentiles and preach the gospel to them. So, here we see the movement of the gospel from being a gospel for people at home gospel for people abroad. And ever since then, the gospel has been a gospel for the entire world. As I said, we had 5 people that attended this last week, and I've asked 3 of those people this morning to give you their responses to specific parts of the Synod. Now, what I will tell you is this. If any of you have ever been to a church conference before, pardon me for just a moment. Your idea of a church conference may involve 2 things. A lot of squabbling and fighting at a national level, and if not squabbling and fighting, then just a lot of business. And I think it's probably safe to say that one of the great things that I've always appreciated about our synods is we don't ever fight about anything, because we know what we believe, and we just live what we believe. And we don't change what we believe, and so as a result, we don't have anything to fight about. And the other thing is, our synods are basically sort of like our annual church meetings. You remember that most of our work we accomplish within about 30 or 40 minutes. They don't take a lot of time, and our annual synods don't take a lot of time either for business. We have some representatives there from places around the world. We had a number of missions, some of our missions around the world in India and the Philippines that were both well represented. And so we have reports from those people. We have a lot of reports that people deliver. Mostly we laugh a lot. We have a lot of good time. We have a lot of fun. And but the main thing is we worship a lot. Because as Anglicans, worship is central to everything that we do. And so we worship a lot. And I'm going to ask Nancy to come and talk with us for a few minutes about the first great worship event that we had there, which was on Wednesday evening. Nancy?
We all had been to meetings all day long, and then at 5 o'clock we went to the cathedral, which is somewhere down in Orlando. We were on buses to get there, and when we got out, we were all taken to the chapel, and it was not much bigger than this, a little, but it had a tremendous altar area, choir area, with choir members and organs and trumpets and all kinds of things around the wall. But the service was so dramatic that when they came in, you were caught from the minute the first one walked in the door. You had the one, the little boy in red who swung the incense. Then you had the crucifer. Then you had 2 or 3 other bishops in line. And as they went down, they all parted and went to their separate locations. And then when the service started, they all came back together in the center, and they worshiped abreast with us, directing us what to do from there. But it was just spectacular to see everything go forward and then stay in the nave, the narthex, nave, the nave. And there were 3 or 4 abreast of priests up there doing different things at different times, but all together. They had 2 little fellas in red that knelt to help somebody up or down. It depended on whether they were going. And the service was just tremendous. The choir sang, he preached. I thought Bishop Grundahl,
preached,
which is about 5 Gene size. He wasn't a big, gigantic man, but he was very delightful, very easy to get to know, and he just presented everything right there to you. And you were just amazed at how much to do can be done at one service without distracting from your service. But it was grand. I've never seen anything quite so spectacular as that was. But it went off smoothly. Everybody enjoyed it, and everybody went to eat. We ate a lot. I enjoyed it thoroughly. Thank you for sending me.
Okay, now let me just make one minor correction. All of this out here is called the nave.
Okay.
This area up here is called the chancel area. And what you're talking about
It's in the
are all
chancel
the people that worked in the chancel area. And there were, like you say, several abreast that were working up there. And the one I think that really caught your eye was the little boy that was probably to our right. And he was so engaged in the service that you know that he had to be extremely well trained.
Right, he just did everything without a hitch.
Yeah, everything was done beautifully. Now, I'm going to ask you a question here, and I think you'll probably be able to figure out the answer very easily. We had well over 200 people there. And the question is, when these 200 people were worshiping, were there 200 worshipers worshiping, or was there one body that worshiped, even though there were 200 bodies?
Just one. You heard it all in one.
Yeah, and that...
You couldn't distinguish anything. It was
Right.
all together.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that has always impressed me most about Anglican worship, and which I enjoy mostly about Anglican worship. And I really believe that we are moving in that direction ourselves, because we're becoming a better trained congregation as time goes on. But the thing that really stuck out to me as we worshiped for nearly 2 hours is that although we had over 200 people there, it was as if we were one body worshiping in one mind. And that mind was the mind of Jesus Christ, and we were worshiping God the Father in the power of the Holy Spirit. And it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. I really believe that this was the absolute best synod I've ever attended. And I see us as a diocese continuing to grow and to grow together in real spiritual unity. So thank you for that report. And if you've never been to an experience like that, where you have the big procession and you have the incense all around and so forth, and yeah, there were some people that coughed and gagged and everything like that with the incense because they're not used to it. For the most part, it is biblical, that's for sure, to use incense in worship. It is a great experience. And now I will ask Elizabeth to come and talk with us about the music part, okay?
Unlike some of you, I can't turn around in a few. Can't do it. The music in the High Mass was most impressive because not only did the choir sing, the congregation did too. There was chant, there were hymns, there were call and response things, and it was all very moving and very joyous all at the same time. We had a session on chanting in the church, and I was most intrigued by that because Father Gene and I have done some of that around Easter time in here, where I would chant and he would read. And I think that I discovered more than anything that by chanting the psalms and chanting whatever we could, you pay attention to what you're chanting. You're not just reading by rote or looking off in the distance, but you are absolutely paying attention, and it means so much more by doing it that way because you are thinking about what you're saying. There are hymn tunes that you can use with the psalms, yes, but by using the chants, both in major and minor modes, it brought home the agony or the joy of what you were saying. And I would frankly like to see us do some of that, not all of that, but some of that. I won't stress you too bad at the beginning. But some of that here, because I think you would find it fulfilling, and I think you would find it very meaningful. There are ways to do it. I am planning to be in touch with Michael, their choir master organist, and get some more ideas and some more learn more ways of doing it. And hopefully by September, when we start our new fall season here, we can begin to learn some of that. Not all the time, certainly, but where it needs to be. I would love to see us chant the Psalms. I really would. And I thought that, at least for me, it made more sense. Psalms are meant to be sung. All of the Psalms are meant to be sung. And I'm sure that, as they said there, if Jesus was here and he heard the Psalms chanted in this way, he'd be right there with us and able to do it. So, I don't know. I love the music of the church. I love the 1940 hymnal. I love the CLH. And I think there's much, much more for us to learn and be able to do out of both of those hymnals, out of the chant, and out of any music that we find and that we like.
Thank you, Elizabeth. You touched on something there that I want to follow up on. All of the Psalms are Hebrew poetry. Okay? They were written in Hebrew, and they are poetry. They were written in a poetic form. And all of the Psalms were sung by the Jewish people. They still sing the Psalms. And they still use the ancient chants of the Jewish faith. Jesus undoubtedly learned the Psalms by singing. He chanted every one of the Psalms. It's very possible when he was on the cross and he was hanging there in such great agony, and he began to repeat the words of the 22nd Psalm, that he might even have tried to sing them there. The idea of reading the Psalms would be very, very foreign to any modern Jew. The idea of singing the Psalm, or reading the Psalms, would be very foreign to most liturgical Christians, because the Psalms were meant to be chanted. And there are ways, there are tunes for chanting the Psalms that are very simple, that we can learn, and I think I agree with Elizabeth, it will make a lot of difference, I think, in the way that we can learn. If you give me a tune, I can memorize things much better than if I just simply repeat them verbally. I can always remember a tune. I can't always remember words. But if I have a tune, then I can put the words with the tune. I've asked Elizabeth on the first Wednesday night in September, when we start back on our fall schedule, we're going to eat over there at 6 o'clock, and then we're going to come over here, and she's going to teach us a model for chanting all of the Psalms. Now, there are different ways that Psalms can be chanted, but we're going to start with one simple model that will be easy to remember. And we don't have to have you play it on the piano, because all we need to do is we just need to have the pitch. That's all.
You will end up with 2 or 3 pitches.
Yeah, riches is all. And it's going to really make a difference in our worship, and you're going to love it. I really promise you will as time goes on. You're going to love that even more. Now, Peggy, I've asked to come and give us a report on the main speaker. I think that's what you're going to talk on, right?
Yeah, and a little bit about it.
Okay. And so she's going to come and give her impressions.
I'm going to come up so I can face everybody when I talk here. First of all, the age-old question, are we alone out there? Definitely not. We have a whole entire church praying for us all the time and wanting us to do well. Most of the churches that were represented there, a lot of them were as small as we are, if not smaller. When I came, this is the delegate badge that I wore. On the back is everything that we did, all of the timetables and discussions that we were going to have. The white in my lanyard designates me as a delegate or an observer. The priests all wore red. I could always tell who a bishop was because they wore purple. Very good that they did that because that identified them.
There were a lot of purple shirts too.
Yes, there were. I actually sat at a table for the banquet that we had with the oldest bishop in the diocese. And he was in his 90s. And he was just a wonderful, joyful man.
He ate everything on his plate.
He did. I didn't, but he did. He did really
After
well.
he took his oxygen mask off.
Yes.
Matter of fact, he looked just like my mom.
He did. It
We
was
were like,
great.
are you German? Because you look just like my mom. And it's kind of like poor mom.
It was Bishop Moore.
Yeah. One of the things that I was really amazed at is how well organized everything was. Everything was done exactly by the book. When we did do some voting for things. They gave us the church-wide treasurer's report. And we're doing very well. And then they asked us to go and pledge what us as a church were going to give to the entire community of the churches. And so we were actually able to let them know that our pledge for this year is $1,400, so which was a $200 increase that we made. We were asked to go above and beyond 3%, and we did quite a bit more than that. So we felt very good about that as a church. The other things, the whole mission was local missions and overseas. The main speaker for it was one of the deacons from the Philippines, and he came and showed us a lot of what they were doing over there. They did a major typhoon relief where they actually went out and distributed food, building supplies, and other things to these people that were in a lot of the outlying islands that were struck the worst for that. They also collected money to build a training center, and they also collected money that will go towards actually building the bishop, the cathedral that's going to be there, and the bishop's residence that will be there as well. So those are some of the things that our mission money supported. He was very thankful and sent heartfelt thanks from the people of the Philippines for our Lenten appeals that we did, that gave them money enough to help these people. They showed some of the devastation, and these people lost everything. They lost their homes. And all they did was provide the food and the materials. The Philippine people are hardworking people that took that material, helped others, and built homes. One of the gentlemen was given money for him, for his house, and for building up, and instead of building the home, he built a church. And then he stays in one little room of the church while it's being built. It still isn't even completed. And that's what he did with that money that was supposed to help him. So These people are very gracious. Our money means everything to them. What we gave did such good to these people, and they are so thankful for it. And it just isn't foreign missions that are involved either. I brought some pamphlets with me that talk about some of the other missions that are happening around. Gilliam's Promise is one of the local things that are going on to help youth in crisis. There's books about some of the missions that we contribute to and how we're helping and doing things, and you can read up on these. I brought all of them with me from the brochures. The Synod on a whole, every priest from every church that was represented came up and talked about the miracles and the wonderful things and some of the sad things that were happening in their church. One gentleman who came up spoke about his church. Everyone in his church is older than him, and he was in his like 70s. So he has a couple of people that were 100, going to celebrate their 103rd birthday, their 100th birthday within the next year or so. And so we're talking about a community that is together in their worship, and they all are together in their beliefs. And they feel that through this togetherness and this belief, we can bring others in to know God and to be able to present that to the world in the majesty of our worship, the reverence of our worship. The Grand Mass would have given you goosebumps if you had been there and been a part of it. It was like one glorious voice to heaven. It was just so wonderful. But there was humor. Bishop Grundorf, I don't know what he drives, but it's got to be some kind of vehicle, because they made fun about it there. They said, of course, not all of us can drive what Bishop Grundorf drives. And there he is sitting right there. And he just went into it. One young man who is, I think, the priest of the Jonesboro Church.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my goodness. We were like almost falling on the floor. This guy goes, he had to put in stained glass window. One of his parishioners does stained glass. But they're in an old church where they couldn't get permits for everything. So what they did is the front of the church they couldn't do anything with. So they did stained glass windows behind the altar that tells the story of Christ and everything. He said because half of them can't read. So he figured out he could tell the story in the stained glass and they'd understand it from there.
This is Jonesboro.
This is Jonesboro. It must be really out in the woods. But these priests are on fire. His church must be, I mean, the way he was talking. These priests are on fire for God.
I've never felt so much energy, ever.
They are just, I mean, they bound up, and of course you know Bishop Chad. He's like unbounding energy anyway, and they were talking about the camp that he helped support and all with the kids. They had 41 children at the camp, and a lot of them are returning over and over again. Some of the kids that have gone through the camp are now coming back as counselors for the camp. So this is a wonderful outreach that we have there too. But all of these people are on fire for you, for us, because they want to be what we need to grow us in God. And that was evident over everything in the Synod. And I have lots of things. I got something especially for Lou. Vintage stitches. They do all kinds of things for altars and stuff. I snagged this one real quick. And then there's also a cookbook that I got from one of the churches there. So if you want some recipes and stuff. But it was just a joy. I spoke with the gentleman from the Philippines. I also spoke with another man who has a mission in the Philippines. And they did a report on that out on there. They had pictures of everything that they helped with. So our money, even though we might think it's not a whole lot, goes a very long way to help people all over, whether here or outside and overseas. So that's what.
I have a question.
Sure.
You mentioned something, and I'm not sure if it was in connection just with the Philippines and with missions and all that the money went. thought some of it was for training for what?
A training facility for lay people and acolytes, and I think also some kind of
Priests.
training for the priests.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know if it's ongoing education. He didn't go into a lot on what the training was per se, but when I saw them in their little church, they had a very small church, but they have an altar and they have candles, acolytes. They had all the same things that we have here. They have there even for these small
He
churches.
didn't have a musical instrument, have an organ,
They had an organ, yes, that was
but they have
donated.
totally outgrown it.
Yeah, that's why they're building the new cathedral in the Philippines, is because they have,
It brought-
some of the churches even that we have here in the States have grown so much that one of the ministers said that people were sitting on the laps, and he said it wasn't a priest of that kind of church, so they had to get more pews or something, they had to build. So that was really, just, and the love and the outpouring there is just incredible. Everybody, you didn't meet any strangers. Everybody would pray with you. We started every day with prayer. We ended every day with prayer.
Morning prayer.
They turned 3 of the conference rooms into basically a sanctuary in the morning. And they even had communion one day for that. So, I mean, this was very, you guys need to go to a synod. If you can do it just once in your life, you need to do it. I never even thought that it was going to be this kind of an experience. I was just pumped. It was fun. Of course, the 2 days at Universal Studios was fun.
Of course, I came back this morning, I got up and I looked out the window and I thought, oh, I'm still in sunny Florida where it rains all the time.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
And it
That's
didn't
true.
clear up until the day.
Rained
we
every
left.
day down
It
there.
was so humid there. I took my pills, I still take some pills, and part of that was vitamins. The humidity was so bad that my vitamin pills melted into all my other pills, and I was got a pill to take. So it was just horrible. But other than that, it was fun.
Well, thank you, ladies, for your contribution. The one sad note to the Synod was that none of our representatives from our churches in India
India could make it
could come.
They were denied.
They were denied visas
by the government.
by their government. They were not allowed to travel and talk about their faith and talk about the growth of the
They weren't
church.
high caste.
They
And they weren't Buddhist or Muslim.
Our church there has 2 large dioceses of over 5,000 members in each diocese, and we were expecting one of the bishops to come from one of the dioceses and talk with us about the things that they have accomplished with the monies that we have sent them. The government is glad for us to send money, but they will not let their bishops and their priests travel and speak to anybody here about what's going on religiously in India, because there are some not so good things going on there.
Are
So,
they persecuted, Father?
oh yes, absolutely.
In India?
And what you have to remember is that most of the people in our churches in India come from the lowest caste. And so they're not allowed to move out of that caste at all, regardless of what transpires in their lives or whatever. But they are like some of the slaves in New Testament times. Part of the joy of the slaves in New Testament times was that here was the message that says, you are equal in right with your slave owner. And if you happen to have a Christian slave owner and you happen to be a Christian slave, you are one in Jesus Christ. And that's the message that's being preached in India, and that's the message that the Indian government does not, which is primarily Hindu, does not want to get out about life in India. At any rate, we'll have another meeting next year, and I hope that maybe we'll have some others that will be interested in going and participating and having a lot of fun. And we'll see where God takes us next summer. Right now, we don't have an announcement of the next location, but we'll have that pretty soon. Let's at this time stand. Okay, go ahead, Doris.
Make an announcement about next Sunday.
Oh, yes, the bishop will be here next Sunday. Thank you for reminding me. He will be here next Sunday. He's coming for two purposes. He will be making his Episcopal visit. He will confirm and receive some new members into our church, and he will also bless our altar, which I cannot do. Only bishops can bless altars, and so that's something that he's coming to do for us. And I know he's going to be really, really pleased with this beautiful altar that we have up here.
This is the big one,
This is the high bishop.
This is the big kahuna.
Okay.
The high bishop as opposed to the low bishop.
Yeah.
Okay, all
The
right.
suffragan, Bishop Jones, is the low bishop, and Bishop Grundorf is the high bishop, if you want to put it that way. So thank you for reminding me of that. Let's stand and sing our offertory hymn.
Well, hello.
Thanking